much. My name is Saeed Asif, and I wanted to say that the aspirations of the Iranian people for freedom and democracy will be realized, and it's not dependent on either the neocons that want to bomb us or the peace movement who will appease any tyrant and change the data to fit their view. Equally, both of these are equally detrimental to our aspirations for freedom. We will be free in Iran. There's a coalition that has arisen of women, of students, and of labor, and that coalition will change Iran. But the argument I'd like to make, and the question I have, is it's in American national interest to align itself with this movement. The same way that it was in 1953. Kaveh, you made a great point that the United States has, for almost its entire length of transactions with Iran, has lined up against the interests of the Iranian people. They did in 1953. They're doing it again now. And 50 years from now, just as Obama apologized for 1953, 50 years from now, an American president will have to apologize not for what America did do, but for what America didn't do. Nuclear weapons, the significance of nuclear weapons, of course, is dependent on who holds them. If nuclear weapons are in the hands of Ahmadinejad, the United States has a significant problem, the world has a significant problem. But if Iran possesses nuclear weapons and has a democratic government, it is inconsequential. I hope that you who write about about American policy towards Iran have read the book Islamic Government written by Khomeini in the 60s. And you'll know that the nuclear issue is not even the main issue. The Khomeiniist government in Iran has anti-Westernism, anti-modernity, and in its DNA. Whether they have nuclear weapons or not will not change that.
So, was there a question in there?
No, I'd like you in particular to comment on. You said you don't care what's going on in Iran. You are interested in American policy. My argument or my question is that it is not about your humanitarian concern for the Iranian people. We will take care of ourselves. It is about American national interest, and it is in American national interest for there to be a democratic government in Iran.
So, it's not the first time I've ever been accused of appeasing dictators. Usually they were right-wingers, like when we were opposing the U.S. war in Iraq, and arguing for a diplomatic solution to both of those horrible military conflicts before they took place. Look, I didn't say that I don't care what happens in Iran. It's not I'm an American citizen. My responsibility is for U.S. policy, if the policy of the U.S. government. If Iranians want to overthrow the Iranian government, mazel tov. But it's not the, I mean, I think you're saying the same thing as me. Like you're saying that Iranians will take care of it. Good. Don't ask the United States government to intervene in Iran on your behalf, both because, as you said, you should take care of it, and because it's immoral for, the United States government should not be picking, other people's governments or their processes. That's immoral, and that's caused great problems in the past. And it's also the case, if you follow the history of U.S. policy, is that human rights has been invoked as a weapon of U.S. imperialism. Kaveh sort of referred to this indirectly. We have two narratives of human rights in U.S. foreign policy. One is for official enemies, and one is for client states. So Iran has had the discourse that's for official enemies. It's not, as Kaveh said, because people in the U.S. government care about human rights in Iran. It's because it's been a useful stick with which to beat the Iranian regime that the U.S. is opposed to for other issues, not because of their human rights. I'm not completely cynical about this in the sense that I do, if you ask me in principle, should the United States promote democracy and human rights in the world? My answer is yes. But in putting that into practice, I think one has to take responsibility for the reality that A, it isn't something that the U.S. government has historically been sincerely concerned about, and B, that there is this history which continues into the present of the United States government using a rhetoric of human rights as an instrument of imperialism. And I don't think, progressive people want to be involved in that. And I don't think progressive people want to advocate that I certainly don't want to advocate that the U.S. should pick sides in other countries' political conflicts. I wanted Masavi to win. That would have made my job easier as somebody trying to promote a diplomacy with Iran. But as somebody in the U.S. trying to promote diplomacy with Iran, I have to deal with the Iranian government that exists, as does the U.S. government. I look forward to there being a different government in Iran in the future. But right now, for the reasons that I outlined, I and other people in the U.S. have to deal with the situation. I think it's important to to at least have an understanding of realism about what the U.S. can do with respect to Iran on the question of human rights. And one of the reasons that I think a deal is possible on the nuclear file, we should talk about everything and negotiate about everything, but the U.S. and Iranian positions are not that incompatible. At least you can see a solution where on the one hand Iran gets to enrich uranium, on the other hand assurances are given that Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapons program. On human rights, right now there are 3 Americans detained in Iran, and the United States hasn't been able to get them out. Of course the U.S. is talking to Iran about that. I think it's naive to think that the U.S. actually has the power just by saying, well, we're not going to deal with you if you don't do what we want in human rights. I don't think that's going to bring about the change you want. And I think if the U.S. said to the Iranian government, public support, public opinion in the U.S. won't accept a deal unless you do X, Y, and Z, I don't think that would be credible, because it's obvious to the Iranians that that's not how the U.S. government makes policy, and that's not actually where U.S. public opinion is, according to poll data. The U.S. public opinion is concerned about whether we like it or not, about Iran's nuclear program. So that has to be dealt with.
I think we need to move on. Okay, I didn't make this stipulation at the beginning, but if we can try to keep answers to about 3 minutes, that would be good. Next questioner.
This is more for COVID. I came here to hear your debate versus Obama's debate, or Obama's stand, and I was presented with your debate versus Bush's stand. I was wondering if you think that's where the debate level is in the U.S. right now. The arguments that I heard against you is not very updated, very naive in terms of relying on some surveys that a lot of facts have come to make it. But I don't even want to go back that way, because I want to move forward, and I'm wondering if you think the debate level is that far apart from each other. Because I don't think we got what Obama is thinking.
No, I don't think we're that far from each other. I think Robert has a good heart, and we agree with each other. So, yes, there has to be negotiation. And I do think that Iran's, if I've been asked, and this is what I've answered, to, kind of US diplomats as to what to do with regard to Iran. My position is this: I think Iran's nuclear program is not a strategic threat to the US. It should be de-strategized and dealt with as a legal and a technical matter that the United Nations is completely capable and qualified and appointed to deal with this matter. I can say this. And you look at Iran's regional policy and the United States, their interests at the national level are not really that far apart, and they're actually quite overlapped in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Iran has no interest in Taliban coming back to power. I think this regime, all of it, and I think even if this regime changes and another government comes to power in Iran, I think their policies and their view towards its neighbors, Iran's neighbors, will be pretty much like what this regime is. Iran has no interest and realizes that it can't monopolize power in Iraq, for example. That it is good that the Shiites are in power, but at the same time, it's well aware that if the Shia in Iraq try to take all of the power, then Iran will get into a very costly battle with Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Syria and the Arab world over this, which it can't afford and it cannot manage. So it does want the Shia, who are demographically the majority, to be in power, but it actually wants them to be fairly weak and dependent on Iran as a result. And I think Iran even wants the US to have some kind of presence in Iraq. Despite the rhetoric that we want, all the U.S. soldiers to leave, because as long as U.S. is in Iraq, Iraq will not fall apart. This kind of coalition government that is in power will stay in power, more or less, and other neighbors of Iraq will not intervene in Iraq. Especially Turkey and Saudi Arabia, that Iran is very concerned with, right? So I think at a diplomatic level, whether this coalition that's in power in Iran, the militaries who are in power in Iran right now, or a reformist government in Iran, or even another government, will basically maintain the same sorts of attitudes, and it can deal with the United States. The problem with the Obama administration, in my opinion, is that if you listen to the questions that they're asking, are the sanctions really hurting Iran or not? If we cut gasoline, what will happen? Will they really kind of cripple the Iranian economy or not? The string of questions that one hears coming out of the Obama administration is all geared toward getting now that they know that the militarists in Iran are on the back foot and are on the defensive and are negotiating from a position of weakness, they want to get the maximum benefit that they can out of this negotiation. And I'm afraid what they will give up, my 3 minutes are running away, so. I'm afraid what they will give up in exchange for getting maximum concessions out of the U.S. is that they will sell out they'll basically leave the hand of the people in power in Iran to bring out a bloody clampdown. This is what I fear. This is what we have to really, the peace movement has really to push for. We cannot demand, and it's no business of the U.S., I do not believe in this and we're in complete agreement on this, that it's no business of the U.S. to bring democracy to Iran or anywhere else. This is not what we want. What we do not want is for the U.S. to say that, all right, give us what we want from you, lay off, supporting, urging Hezbollah and Hamas, and give concessions regionally, give up, your nuclear enrichment. In exchange, we'll give you a free hand to do what you want domestic, and we won't say anything. Which is what the U.S. does with all the other authoritarian regimes in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in all these other, authoritarian, tyrannical regimes, right? What is different with Iran? It's none of our business, let's lay off. And as Robert was saying, there is this strain of self-interest even in American public, right? You ask them, what do we do with Iran? Do we bomb it? They say, yeah, go ahead, bomb it. They don't think that, all right, do we want to have a third front? I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan have basically almost bankrupted the U.S. economy and pushed the world into a crisis. Do we want a third war or not? The American public doesn't think that far ahead, right? This is a problem. It's our task to bring this up, that if you say this nonsense, that means opening up a third front and maybe multiple other fronts, because the whole region will go up in fire. So even out of self-interest, we have to push this line that you cannot ignore human rights in Iran. Find a creative way to enter it into negotiations and respect them.